forest seemed endless, a tapestry of towering trees and shadowed trails. We were 2 days into our weekend hike, eager to disconnect from the chaos of college life. It was Jake who spotted the unmarked trail, half hidden by undergrowth. "Shortcut," he said confidently, stepping forward. The rest of us hesitated but followed. At first, the trail felt like an adventure, a secret path no one else knew about. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in shifting patterns, and the air carried the scent of damp earth. But soon the trail narrowed, the trees pressed closer, and a creeping unease settled over us. An hour in, we found the first tent. Torn, weather-beaten, and abandoned, it leaned like a ghost of past hikers. Scattered around it were water bottles, boots, and a torn journal. I picked it up, the pages warped from rain, but still legible. "Can't shake the feeling of being watched," one entry read. The rest described strange sounds and shadows moving at the edge of the writer's vision. Jake laughed it off, but I felt the weight of those words, heavy and cold in my chest. We pressed on, though the forest grew darker and quieter. The usual rustling of leaves and birds chirping gave way to an eerie stillness. Then we noticed the claw marks, deep gouges etched into the trees, too large for a bear, too precise for anything else. That night we set up camp near a cluster of rocks. The fire's glow was comforting, but the unease lingered. None of us talked much, the silence broken only by the occasional snap of a branch. When I woke in the middle of the night, it was to find Jake's sleeping bag empty. We called for him, our voices swallowed by the forest. There was no reply, only the distant crunch of leaves. Panic set in, and we grabbed our flashlights, sweeping them through the trees. I thought I saw movement, a fleeting shadow, but it was gone before I could focus. We didn't sleep after that. By dawn, we decided to backtrack and retrace our steps to the main trail, but the path had changed. Landmarks we'd passed hours before were gone, replaced by unfamiliar terrain. It was as if the forest itself had shifted overnight. The tension among us turned to fear as the feeling of being watched grew unbearable. Twigs snapped behind us, deliberate and steady, as though something or someone was keeping pace. We broke into a run, the weight of our packs slowing us down. I don't know how we found the main trail. One moment we were lost, and the next we stumbled into familiar ground, the trees opening up like a curtain pulled back. Relief hit me like a wave, but it was short-lived. Ahead, the ranger station stood in ruins, its door hanging by a single hinge. Claw marks crisscrossed the walls, deep and jagged. We didn't go inside. We just kept walking, the unshakable feeling that something had followed us out of the forest. The cabin looked perfect in the photos, isolated, cozy, and surrounded by endless mountains. We booked it as a last-ditch effort to fix what had been breaking between us. The driveway was a mile-long gravel path that led to a clearing, and beyond it, nothing but dense forest. "Just us," we had said. The first night passed uneventfully. The fireplace crackled as we tried to fill the silence with small talk. It felt forced, like everything lately. I woke to a sound, a faint scratching at the window. Too tired to care, I told myself it was tree branches and went back to sleep. The next morning, I found the scratches outside. They were deep and deliberate, too high for any animal I could think of. I brushed it off as wildlife and focused on the day. We planned a short hike, but when we got to the car, it wouldn't start. I popped the hood, expecting a dead battery, but the wires had been cleanly severed. "That's not an animal," I muttered. Then we saw the footprints. Heavy, booted prints in the mud circling the cabin. My stomach turned. Whoever it was had been watching us. I scanned the tree line, but saw nothing but shadows that seemed darker than they should have been. Back inside, we tried to make sense of it. We had no cell service, and no way to call for help. When I suggested walking down the road, she shook her head. "Let's wait until morning," she whispered. That night, the sound of heavy breathing outside the door woke me. It wasn't wind or an animal. It was deliberate, measured. The doorknob rattled, then stopped, then rattled again. I grabbed the fire poker and motioned for her to stay quiet. The windows creaked under pressure, as if someone was leaning against them, testing their strength. Then came the bang. One loud slam against the door, followed by silence. My heart felt like it would burst. At dawn, we decided we couldn't wait. On the porch, a knife was lodged in a tree trunk with a note tied to the handle. "Run," it read. My hands shook as I grabbed it. We fled, abandoning our things. The forest felt alive with movement, branches snapping behind us as if someone was following. I didn't dare look back, not until we reached the road. When the car approached, relief washed over me. I waved it down frantically, almost crying when it slowed. The driver rolled down the window. And then I saw the mask, the same mask we'd glimpsed through the window the night before, and he didn't speak. Just stared. Then he drove away, his taillights disappearing into the fog. We walked until another car came, hours later, and flagged it down with more caution this time. But the feeling of being watched hasn't left me since, and I haven't set foot in the mountains again. The lake house felt like a dream at first, remote, quiet, surrounded by water that shimmered in the sunlight. We arrived Friday afternoon, a group of coworkers desperate to unwind. By Saturday night, everything had changed. It started with the rowboat. Eric found it near the dock, half sunken and covered with a tarp. Curious, he tugged the tarp away, revealing a duffel bag. He unzipped it, then froze. Inside were clothes, dark with dried blood. "We need to call someone," I said, my voice shaking. Eric nodded, but when we reached the house, our phones were gone. Not misplaced, gone. The tension grew as we argued over what to do. Then we saw it. A thin blood trail leading from the dock into the woods. Night fell quickly. Too quickly. We locked the doors and stayed together, but our nerves were raw. Jen accused Eric of planting the bag. He snapped back, but before the argument could boil over, we heard a sound, a splash. Eric grabbed a flashlight and stepped out. He didn't come back. We waited an hour, then two. Finally, Jen and I went looking. The flashlight lay in the grass near the dock, but there was no sign of Eric. Just water lapping at the shore and the wind rustling through the trees. We returned to the house, but something was off. Chairs had been moved and the back door was ajar. Panic set in. Jen grabbed a knife from the kitchen and I barricaded the front door. At some point, we fell asleep in shifts, exhaustion overtaking fear. When I woke, Jen was gone. I called her name, searching every corner of the house, but the silence was deafening. My mind raced. Had she run? Was she taken? I decided to leave. I couldn't stay there. Grabbing the keys, I headed to the dock and untied the boat. The oars creaked as I rode into the middle of the lake, the shore shrinking behind me. That's when I saw the second cabin. It was smaller, hidden among the trees on the far side of the lake. Smoke curled faintly from the chimney. I rode closer, heart pounding, hoping for help. But as I approached, the truth hit me like ice water. Through the window, I saw shelves lined with trophies, watches, keys, phones, and pinned to the wall was a photo of our group, taken just hours before, and the sound of footsteps on the dock froze me. I didn't look back. I rode until my arms burned, not stopping until I reached the other side of the lake. I stumbled into the woods, running until I found a road. They found the lake house empty the next day. No bodies, no killer, just the boat drifting in the shallows and a blood-stained duffel bag left on the shore.